Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to The Choice to Grow. I am so grateful for you, all of you who are following and listening and sharing and tuning into these dialogues. I have a very special guest who I've been waiting for some time to share with you. Her name is Kristen Ragusin, and she is the best-selling author of an extraordinary book that's available in physical print as well as the Audible. I recommend both. The Audible, Kristen reads it herself, and for me, it was like a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. The book is called The End of Scarcity. Kristen's also a professional wealth management advisor with over 30 years of experience. She's a certified digital currency expert and earned her master's degree from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. She holds certificates in FinTech from MIT and in money mechanics from University of Cumbria, London. Kristen loves the adventure of her life, and it really shows. Her journeys through the world include climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, hiking through the Sahara Desert, and studying at a spiritual school in the foothills of southern India. I met Kristen at Lake Como, Italy, last fall, at least at this recording. We were at a special 5-day program with Donnie Epstein called the Total Donnie Experience, really stepping into a liminal space together of not knowing and having strong intention to bring something forward for more than just ourselves, but for the world. And what really strikes me and again about Kristen is how grounded she is in her own feet, how present she is from the heart, and how there's no grasping whatsoever. There's no grab in a conversation with Kristen. There's simply curiosity, presence, admiration, love, and listening for what's possible. So without further ado, with all of my heart and great respect, Kristen, thank you for being here at The Choice to Grow.
Oh, thank you, Scott. My gosh, what a wonderful introduction. That is so kind. And I'm so happy to be here with you and all your people.
When you hear the title of the show, The Choice to Grow, what gets evoked today?
Oh, that is life. I love the title of the show. And that to me is really the choice to live or not to live.
Say a little bit more about how you're holding that.
Yeah, life is growth. Life, to really be living life, is growth. And I think when we're trying to maintain or sustain, we're actually in the process of dying. And so life still requires death in every moment. Um, I saw just the cutest meme, earlier, maybe yesterday, of a bird close up with its unbelievable, adorable little prey with the face of it on it. And I thought, oh, this is so morbid and horrible. But at the same point in time, this is life. In every moment, life requires this constant circle, and it's the circle of transformation. And for as much as certain times it gets overwhelming, we're just attempting to sustain or make it enough, we're actually making the commitment to death at that point, to dying, instead of choosing to live, which is choosing to grow.
To my ear, it almost sounds like you might be pointing at two different types of death, like one that's regenerative and like evolutionary, like the completion of something that becomes compost, and another that's simply just like withdrawing from life itself in such a way as to have no energy resources.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Right. And where life is unbelievably forgiving, right? In the sense that every moment, even when we don't choose, the next moment we have constantly another moment to choose again. And really that, sort of even that adorable animal dying for the bird to live is that regenerative. We do want to die to our past self over and over, or to each moment having lived it fully as was possible in that moment. And it's the moments of comfort, not that we shouldn't have comfort, not that we shouldn't have some, treading water and certainly stillness, which may even be different, but it's really having that full experience so that we can grow. Um, hmm.
Hmm. In the book, you help us, and I had to really remind myself with your support when I bumped into you in Denver to keep going through the part that felt difficult, which was where you're showing us the economy that most of us have been brought up into in the United States as well as in number other countries, maybe most other countries, the difference between a debt-based money system and the possibilities in an abundance system. You do help us to reflect on periods. Was it King George that you mentioned for like 300
Yeah, for a
years?
very long, yeah, for one of the most glorious ages in England, they had a system that was so for the people. And, it created the Magna Carta in 1250. It really was the precursor to the Constitution, which took probably 500 years to distill, you know? So these really living documents that are based in freedom and just respect for life in so many different ways are the product of probably thousands of years, and that are birthed out of doing money correctly, which could sound mundane, but it's so, again, it's the essence of life. And we are, to no fault of our own, indoctrinated to a system that is the opposite of life. That's the opposite of our nature. And so we do believe in scarcity on the whole. And it's echoed in our lives, it's reinforced in our lives. And yet, the truth of it is that it's actually antithetical to life. We are so surrounded by the plenty, by the abundant, the possibilities that are countless, and we're birthed into this, we're birthed from this. So how do we begin to close this gap? And what I really found, after many years of a confluence of different experiences, it's actually in examining how money is created, how money comes into existence, and to find out that it's been done differently many, many times and can easily be done different again. But there are some core ahas that we need to hit first.
So help us to understand what is a debt-based money system? Like, what does that look like? How do I begin to see it if it's been, I have a feeling for many people, for me, it was an eye-opening thing. If I was told this in economics class or something, I don't remember learning it.
Yeah.
For me, it was a big aha. For my buddy Greg, who's got an MBA from Harvard, he's like, "Oh yeah, of course." But like, what is it? How does it work?
It's and it is something that's been written out of the textbooks. It used to be more in the textbooks in the 50s, and even part of what's taught today, I still think is partial. So we believe that someone creates our money supply. So, and we don't really think about it because we know we have a job, or we have to get a job, we have to earn some money somehow. We know we have things we want to buy, have to buy. We're using credit cards, or we're outright writing checks, or we're sending apps. So our experience with money probably is limited to this domain. Okay, I need to get some and I need to use some. And as long as that math works out, or if it works out a little better, we're okay and we're focused on other things. Um, it's this mechanism that I think has the key to tremendous change in the consciousness of humanity and our systems at large, and actually truly where the path lies to bring to really heal this incredible divide, that we're seeing fracturing in so many different kinds of ways between all people. So a debt-based money system basically means that all of the money that we see, I mean, technically 97%, this doesn't include physical cash. Now we're not going to have pennies at some point, but the change in the dollars actually get printed not as debt per se, but all the other money that we see in this world, money that we're paid, money that we're given, money that we use, was first created as a debt. And some people think, oh, the government creates the money, or the Federal Reserve creates the money, or the banks create the money on some level. The truth of it is that borrowers create 97% of our money supply. So if we don't have people who need to go into debt or are willing to go into debt, we actually would have no money to use with one another. And this starts to get already now, it starts to sound strange, because money and debt should be two separate things in our mind, sort of like salt and pepper, or oil and water, but they're actually completely the same thing. They're inseparable in our system. And when somebody wants to go and borrow a mortgage or money for school, they go to the bank. And if the bank says, okay, you look like you're going to be able to pay us back, once you sign on the promissory note to promise to repay, then they create it. And they create 100%. So some people think that there's 10% in reserve, which means a whole bunch of things, but it really doesn't work that way whatsoever. It's a credit system. And as long as we promise to repay and are legally on the hook to repay, they're going to create money. And this actually begins to create tremendous instability in life. It's the source of tremendous inequity, and it destroys capitalism. So it destroys market economies, and it really brings back feudalism, where you have more and more and more and more poor people and a few people with all the wealth. It's how populations over the millennia have been enslaved.
So I can imagine if I was egocentric, like deeply just only self involved, wanting to be one of that 1%, and like believing perhaps that was the only way for me to have all the things I want to have and avoid losing control of that. Is there anything else I'm missing about why organize in that sort of a way?
Yeah, because there really is no separation. So, whether and the real wealth may be 0.001%, when we really look at the system. But, if we take the 1% of society, or the 2% that has some protection from downfalls, technically speaking, it's still not really true, because all of the wealth that they have stored in dollars is technically this cycle of borrower's debt. So years ago, there was the Occupy movement that sort of came out of the WTO in Seattle, which was a big deal and kind of really cool how the people were taking a stand.
WTO stands for what?
Oh, the World Trade Organization.
So that's where the Occupy movement came from.
It really did. It was really birthed in Seattle. And people were starting to fight back against, looking for fair trade instead of free trade. And free trade is often free for, again, sort of this corporate Uber, what I like to call corporatism. And it's the bastardization of capitalism. So it gives capitalism a very bad name. And technically, in my opinion, we don't really have investment or real capitalism. Um, but it's the problem is the money that we've created, not technically a capitalist system, and that can be controversial and take a few minutes to explain, but it can be done. But so the people were actually pushing back and saying, it's the 99% against the 1%. But when you look at the construct of how money comes into existence, which is 97% of it comes into existence as a debt. And the major thing here is that when the debt is repaid, the money is destroyed. And this is so important, and it's not commonsensical. It is and it isn't, but we don't think of it this way in our world. If I borrow $100,000 from Bank of America and my monthly payment is $2,000, let's say $1,000 is interest and $1,000 is principal, I make my first payment. I now owe $99,000 because $1,000 went to repay that debt. But that $1,000 I paid on the debt no longer exists. because the debt is wiped out. So then the money is also wiped out because it's not salt and pepper, oil and water. It is the same like a quarter. If that debt no longer exists, the money no longer exists. Interest is supposed to recycle. Either it does or it doesn't. That's to be determined, but we give banks the benefit of the doubt. So when you think about this, we have a constant draining money supply. So instead of there being a big pool of money that we've created out there through debt for people to earn and spend and for society to run on, sometimes I like to think of it like a big swimming pool. If we're all swimming and playing in a big pool, we need water in that pool. And if we go into debt to put water in the pool, we're also draining it out at the same time because every time a debt is repaid, the water is pushed out. And so you get really the concept of a hamster wheel where humanity itself has to be on a consumer need to buy, earn, repay, borrow, buy, earn, repay, borrow in this whole cycle. And if we ever stop, that's when we get the implosions. And so 2008, we would have had an implosion during COVID, but other different things were happened, but also real inflation, there's just a lot of messing with the money system. And primarily because the legal way it's done today is that banks have the ability to create all the tickets of exchange that we need to exchange with one another based on primarily mortgage debt and college debt. And
Hmm.
this also destroys the American dream because these are two things that people really believe they want for safety or some sense of stability. And they become more and more expensive because the debt is available, but yet the incomes shrink. So that's sort of a little snippet of a debt-based money system.
And then I don't think there's any one abundance-based money system, but what does that look like?
So there have been many in history, and sadly, they have all been wiped out, one or the other, but they are certainly usually born during periods of great squeeze. And
Really?
so they really are, the consciousness of, our ancestors of the late 1700s and the early 1800s. This is what our great grandparents talked about on the street corners. They understood that money was supposed to represent our productive good. All the products and services, all the things that we created through our labor and the resources of the earth and the divine inspiration pumping through us, whether it's as mundane to sweep a floor and clean a toilet, to as beautiful as a piece of art that evokes some higher state of consciousness and remembering, whatever the whole gamut would be, this is humanity's productive good. And the people of certainly in early America, many, many periods of time in Europe and before the Roman Empire fell, understood that the money represented the people's good, which is actually inseparable. It's inseparable from who we are. And so the founding fathers, which if we just were to look at the money creation, they were all in heavy duty debt in England. And I think the primary reason why they left England is because they all were in debt. And I'm not as convinced that it was about religious freedom. Maybe it was some religious freedom, but I think they were primarily in search of monetary freedom and freedom in general for that time period in that period in those societies. And so when they came here, they actually started issuing credit based off of the productive value of those colonies. And that started the Revolutionary War because they had such equity within their own societies. There was prosperity where they didn't have poorhouses and a host of different kinds of things, that it's written in some side documents that actually was the end. That was the beginning of the Revolutionary War because Britain started putting an end to it with all different kinds of laws.
For fear of loss of control?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that, I had gone through 5 or 6,000 years of monetary history, which was truly fascinating. And David Graeber, who was just an incredible thinker, he died a couple years ago. I think he really started the Occupy movement, even though he never wanted to take credit for it. But he was a big catalyst. And he wrote this book called Debt, the First 5,000 Years. And it's outstanding. I think I read it 3 times. And you look at how this story replays and replays and replays. And most of it, again, in the scarcity mindset, in seeking too much safety, that same stability for that, where we started the conversation with, where we're slowly inviting death. That's what brings on the need for control and the desire to control other humans.
Hmm. Hmm. It seems to me, in my observation as a teacher and as a coach, that the need to control seems to arise. I see it in myself when my energy is dropped and I'm coming from some degree of scarcity already. Like there's no need for me to control when I'm connected to the flow of prospering, sourceful energy of life itself. I don't even think about trying to control others or micro control situations.
That's right. That's right. Isn't it amazing? I mean, it's such a profound thought to give some space and really consider. I wonder in life, where the mechanism is for the attention when we find ourselves, and those moments are sown throughout our day, right? Throughout an hour, even in a minute. And if we find them and just have some type of pause to reflect and see that, okay, this is where I am at the moment. What is my mechanism? Is it giving it more space? Is it thanking it? That energy is just part of me loving me, trying to keep me safe, keep things stable, before the mind jumps to that series of thoughts, which create any number of disasters that could be coming, any number of alarms that have to be controlled. And I think that's the ancestral struggle that's been going on at least the dark ages of the planet. And this is our profound opportunity to be with this energy and simultaneously choose the truth, the more divine energy of endless possibilities, a magical world that is absolutely for life, which we're inseparable from. And can we be that transformer, that conduit for both? And of course, the higher energies are much more coherent, so they're much stronger and more creative. And as we dance that dance, each time we dance it, we're laying down a greater ping on the strings that weave us all together in life, and we are bringing this abundant reality um, in much more strongly into the physical each time we do that.
So if I'm picking up what you're putting down, if I tune into greater coherency as a regular, most intentional, and most considered practice, not thought about, but like that's the thing I really put my effort, my energy, my attention around is accessing and embodying coherent energy, then it sounds like I can actually experience abundance, and I'm also contributing to the energy being more noticeable or foregrounded for other people to pick up on in the field of humanity. Does that seem true?
I think so very much, and with also um, the respect for the lower energy at the same time. There's so much. Because I think we all know how painful these lower energy thoughts and feelings are. So the body constricts, the energy systems constrict, the thoughts are painful, and we don't want that in our lives. Or certainly when we're done with it, we don't want to experience it again. But if we come like a little child, or we come with some type of softer, thankful energy to it and allow it, and allow that to be at the same time where we recognize that greater coherency. There is some, I would really imagine there's some type of alchemical experience or process that's going on. And
It's been studied actually at Harvard.
Oh.
maybe not exactly the way you're seeing it. So there's a gentleman whose work I am deeply indebted to and have profound regard for, who wore minimally two hats at the same time for 35 years at Harvard. He was an associate professor of psychology, and so he had access to all the labs and did prolific research. He also was a holder of a Mahamudra Dzogchen Vajrayana Buddhist lineage, and he's a major translator of their texts into English. And so he was doing advanced research, he and his team, in fMRI situations to see what's actually happening in the brains of people in these different practices. And they've got abundant research. And also, what he was responsible for, I guess you could say a third hat, but really part of the psychology hat, he forged what's it called? The Attachment Institute, I think is what it's called. And you can take a free test on your attachment style. We're hearing more and more about people's attachment styles when it comes to forming and deepening lasting relationships. Am I an avoidant? Am I an insecure? Am I disorganized, a little of the first two, or am I secure? And they've got abundant research, as a thick volume about healing attachment disturbances in adults, on how they've been able to heal personality disorders and stuff with these simple protocols. Well, what's the simple protocol? So number one is what's called ideal parent figure meditation. You got to do it over and over again. And his research shows within 6 months to 2 years, it can be completely turned around. 6 months.
Wow.
6 months. And so I've turned it into something I bring to my clients to do in the mirror.
Wow.
Like, you can imagine an ideal set of parent figures. And for some people, that's really great where they're at developmentally. Some people have access to more subtlety. But to go in the mirror, my eyeballs don't know the difference between you looking at me with great love and me looking at with great love. The eyes just receive those impulses. So offering safety and protection, attunement, soothing and comfort, express delight, really important, and support and encouragement for the best self to come online over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's my great preamble on Daniel P. Brown's work. I forgot to say his name, Daniel P. Brown. That I have a feeling as I'm watching it, as I'm giving it in this current Prospering course as a practice, the ones who are doing it, including me, are experiencing shifts in prospering.
Wow.
Like, everything I'm seeing, including so-called spiritual practice, like training in wider recognition of awareness that gets embodied, what pulls that back? What's the counterweight? These disturbances that plague our thinking and our nervous system and our heart rate variability, these projections of something's wrong, something's missing, this hypervigilance that seems to believe the ego believes if I stay hypervigilant, I'm going to avoid more problems. But what I'm really doing is I'm reducing the availability of coherent energy, and I'm going to get more of what I don't want. So there's a lot of words.
Wow.
What do you think about all that?
I think it's so true. I think it's amazing. Well, I mean, it is, and even this is such an example of the magic and brilliance that exists. It exists, that people are doing these things, that people have studied these things, that we have access to these ideas. It's, I don't know whether life just really requires more breathing, just a little bit more space, and the possibility of a little bit more reflection. Now, granted, everybody has a different circumstance and a different ability and different resources and so on, but we're also all linked together. Yeah. And we really truly can never be separate from one another. And so anyone who is introducing and adding these things to their own lives are adding it to the whole, literally to the whole, and also the possibility for the whole at the same time. And, we could take a moment to think of the incredible pain that's been on this planet at least the last 6,000 years. It's more than likely inconceivable. And thank goodness on one level that we can't really fathom it because we couldn't live our lives. But it's also, I believe, from a generational standpoint, parents have healed as much as they can, and then it goes to the next generation. And then the next generation is up to heal as much as they possibly can and go beyond. And I do think we're in a very unique period of time where we have an opportunity to transmute an exponential amount of lower vibrational thinking, different, different patterns of lesser resources, and to really dream and remember how spectacular the human experience can be, and the experience for all of matter, for all of the sentient and seemingly non-sentient beings on this planet.
Hmm.
There's a beautiful community in Italy that talks about different bridge um, different bridge species, that dolphins have also sort of that same sentience as humans and are bridging the gap between the divine and the material, and that other animals are coming online soon. And like I think they said seals were close, elephants, gorillas were close, and so they actually go and do trips just to commune with the animals, sharing that consciousness with the other beings as this entire realm continues to become much more conscious. And I think one of the most valuable ways also that we do that is in a lot of the mundane things in life too. The sense of accountability, the sense of responsibility, the difficult things like maybe balancing a checkbook, these things that seem incredibly mundane, but that really feed that stability, that survivor, that sense of safety, that not to create it as an overwhelm or to take the magic away of life, but to have that beautiful dance between what is it that would give me a slightly greater sense of stability in the moment. Is it cleaning my bathroom? Is it taking care of the five promises that I made to someone else? The integrity of one's word and one's promise. If I said I was going to call someone back, did I? And I think
You're
these,
giving me goosebumps. Like you're my spirit animal. I mean, it's so rare, as we know, for people to have that kind of relationship or more granular with integrity. Like doing what I said I would do by when I said I would do it, as it was meant to be done, or better, without cutting corners, and getting in communication right away when I realize I can't, so that people can pivot.
that's right. This has, again, exponential power. So, just the small integrity of one's word and accountability, whether it's paying the utility bill, when, the guys come to pick up the garbage, every week or twice a week, what would we do without them? What we do, occasionally I'm outside when my garbage guys come and I have the opportunity to thank them, and occasionally I'll tip them, or whatever it is, but just to really thank them, because what would I do if the garbage pickup stopped coming?
New York
And
City dealt with that years ago. There was a period of time when there was a strike, and like the city was covered in garbage and stank,
stank.
let
And
alone the health issues.
the health issues, and that almost is probably one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences of showing our inseparability from one another, the core of gratitude. Money has absolutely no value without each other.
Hmm.
And I think we really saw this during COVID to some degree. If checks came in the mail or we had money in the bank, it had no use, you other than maybe getting food, but you couldn't use the money. And so money itself loses its value as soon as we're not in community with one another.
Wait, can we bring in a principle here? So there's an ancient book called the Emerald Tablets, and it's really where a lot of the teachings of abundance come from, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus out of Egypt. And they're simple principles that are really non-theistic, like everything is mind, everything vibrates, everything moves. And one of the principles is the law of use, that I feel like you might be pointing at. Like if we're not using, like if we're not using the wisdom we've gotten,
Mm.
there's an entropy. If we're not using the resources we've been given, if we're not circulating. So tell us a little bit more about
Oh,
that.
I love this. Yeah, because everything really, I think that the truth of everything is really flow, right? And so I even when I was writing this book, or the book was writing in its final version through me, and at the beginning it was called "Let Them Eat Cake," and the precipice was going to be you can truly actually have your cake and eat it too. And after I had this small tangent, I had done the cover and we'd gotten the website ready and so on and so on. And I I'm one of those people that loves to fold laundry, and I was in my bedroom like happily folding laundry, and I heard wrong title. And I thought, what? Okay, wrong title, but you tell me now, And then I heard the end of scarcity, the dawn of the new abundant world. And I said, okay. And
Did you love it right away, or did it take a minute?
no, I could feel it. I could feel
Okay.
it right away that it was right. And then I just asked to see the cover because it was tremendous work doing the other cover and all the other stuff. And so the image of the cover appeared right away. And the concept is, of course, that you have these beautiful fireflies in a mason jar as the sun is rising, and you spend the night catching them, but you can open the jar to allow the good. The good is flowing through us so much that the good can be free. And this concept that you're pointing to of use, which I have to say I have not studied, but it strikes me so much of the reality of flow, and that money really is a flow. And at one point I thought, okay, the title of the book should be Money is a Verb. It's not a noun, it's a verb.
Ooh.
Right? And just like this gorgeous course that I am very interested that you're teaching, prospering, you prosper. It's a prospering because you're prospering because we are, and we are moneying. There is no such thing of having money. Money is a verb, and because it's a flow. And when I was in India, they used to say, when you think of the mind or you think of the ego, it's like a fan. And when you see it spinning, it looks like a disc. But when it stops, it turns out it's blades. So they would sort of point to that the ego was always afraid of being found out that it was a construct, not a separate reality. But this is the same thing with money. It has no physical reality. It is only a representation of the give and take of the community. And we should be giving and taking. We should be taking and we should be giving and we should be giving and we should be taking. Just as we inhale and we exhale, just as we're growing in life, the concept of moneying cannot be separate from it because it is the very love of life, the creation, the inspiration of the divine, however you feel it, however it stirs in your heart, whether it's to smile at someone, to laugh, to create something, to functionally do something. This is the inspiration that is pumping through us that cannot be separate from us, and it is the basis of money. It is it like the whole body. That's why currency is a current, like the circulation system. It must be in flow for it to be healthy.
Hmm. Hmm. If you were to distill tips for the individual to move from apparent scarcity of money into an abundance of money that they can circulate and continue to trust to come in so they can give it, what would be the distillation of some of those key principles that you've observed with your clients, your financial clients, yourself?
The first thing is really to take a breath, is to really take a breath and to really notice that through the day, how tight we are at times, often. And I really believe there's the mindset of scarcity, which is in the cultural field. Yeah. So it's being echoed in in wanting to fit in on one level. It's being echoed from the media, from this, from that, and even just from fun things, even on social media. But it's and the sense of time. I really feel scarcity will often get me in terms of time. So first, taking a breath. Second, having a little bit more spaciousness to be curious, just interested, where that sense of scarcity um, is speaking in your life, and to really let it be, to not run from it, to allow it. And years ago, I had a meditation teacher. I would do terribly in that class. I would wake up from my head banging against the wall, and it was a great class. And the teacher would say, when you have fear, I had so much anxiety and fear in my 20s. I was building my practice. Just invite the fear in to have a cup of tea. And I thought, oh, what a beautiful idea. Well, it took me many years to be able to do that. But this kind of concept, when we really give scarcity and the feeling of not enough a sense of respect or a seat at the table, to say, you know what, I'm experiencing this because there's a part of me that cares about me, that wants to keep me safe, that wants life to be okay, and to allow it. And then once we allow it, we gain more energy back, and we have an opportunity to start to be a little curious, to be a little interested in where this pattern shows up. And then at that point, I would start to, what I really think is one of the core practices, is then looking all around your life and seeing where there is plenty, seeing where there is a lot of anything. And it could be cement, it could be grass, it could be birds, it could be traffic, it could be stars. It's just beginning to see where there is plenty. You get a bag of rice, there's a lot of rice in it. And when we start to notice how much there is, and and then maybe some of the magic will appear, where things start showing up or coincidences begin happening. And as we get more curious in all of this, we will feel more resourced. And as you and I were just talking about before, Scott, the most important thing that I think people can do where they take action is to be generous of spirit with one another. And this is anybody, everybody, however you can, but to be generous of spirit with whoever is with you, that comes from some type of integral feeling. But maybe you give a compliment more than you would normally have done, or maybe you smile more. But when you have an opportunity to give, you give a little more. And it doesn't have to be in monetary values.
This is evoking for me Adam Grant's seminal work, Give and Take, his first book. Adam Grant, for those of you who are listening, is an organizational psychologist at at Wharton, and he was their highest rated and youngest tenured professor. He's written several books at this point in time, and his first one was called Give and Take. And it basically answers the question of, what does the success pile look like? And it's a bell curve. And the very top were givers, and the very bottom, the least successful, were givers. And he says the difference between the givers who are thriving at the top and the ones at the bottom who are not is the givers at the top have learned to spot and give abundantly to other givers. So there's an infinite cycle of currency. And the ones at the bottom, the givers who are caught at the bottom, keep getting caught and pulled into giving to takers, or what he calls matchers. Like, oh, I gave you a $50 coupon, so you have to give me exactly a $50 coupon, or I can't sleep at night, kind of thing. I'm a recovering matcher. I've been training myself ever since reading that for, 20 years or something, to dissolve that scarcity and just see I always had something to give. But what about this bell curve?
That is so fascinating. I've never heard this before. So I have to get a list of all these books and people I have to look up now. Like, this is so fascinating. It's really interesting. It evokes something that I had spent 10 years learning in India. And one thing they would say to us is, be careful where you give your money. Be careful who you donate to. And there were many beggars on the streets and these kinds of things. And they would admonish us to not give money. And, one could say, oh, is it coming from the caste system in India? Is it this and this and that? But they would say you're feeding a frequency. Now, I'm not saying that one shouldn't give and this and that to homeless people or people in need, or maybe there's a very constructive way to participate in that. I was speaking to a friend of mine who does a lot of work also building villages, and she does work in war-torn zones in Africa with some very, very brutal things that go on. And I do think there is a line where you can sink into that frequency and you can actually become resonant with the suffering and actually amplify the suffering rather than being the higher frequency, which is very difficult to believe in this world for many people, but the all the frequencies exist at the same time. Now, how can one easily jump from the other? I'm not saying that, but the more we hit the tone of the higher frequencies, the more that reverberates through the entire human family.
Well, the
And
principle in alchemy, in the principles or the teachings of alchemy, I'm looking for my pendulum, is that the higher affects the lower. And so, like, they use a principle of a pendulum. Those of you who are watching on video, if you're not, I'm showing in slow motion the movement of a pendulum. And so the principle is for every swing to the left, there's an equal and opposite swing to the right. That's the polarity. And everything has those two dimensions in our duality. So it's like a stick. So prosperity and poverty are not separate. There's degrees of prosperity. There's actually no such thing as poverty. There's degrees of prosperity.
wow.
But I'm not going to move to the end of the stick of prospering towards the prospering if I'm hanging out, focusing on what's wrong, what's missing, criticizing, complaining, and gossiping. I've got to learn how to manage my energy, even in the apparent seeming lack of money to put on bread on the table today. Like, and how can we do that? I think, Kristen, you're pointing it out so beautifully, which is like, I can always smile. My mouth works. Like, I can actually be helpful to people. I could actually like maybe go to the grocery store and just see who wants help carrying their groceries to the car.
And the appreciation of the other. I mean, I think this is really when we see how many other people are around us. What if the people weren't around us? What what if we woke up one day and the people were gone? For as much as we all get aggravated and annoyed and agitated and so on and need a break and this and this and that, what if the people were gone? And so even going to a store or being on a bus and seeing all the different faces, all the different eyes. I had an extraordinary experience once that I was on a plane and just sitting there, and I all of a sudden saw each person coming on the plane as if they were a little baby, and how joyful each family was receiving this new being as a baby. And I had to really sort of try to calm myself down a little bit so I didn't get taken off the plane. It was really turning almost into an ecstatic experience. And just that if you go to the grocery store and you see the eyes of all the different people and the appreciation that did it take the whole planet to get that food in the store? Did it take all the people and for you to have the money, the resources, the ability to walk in the store, one cup of coffee in the morning? How many humans does it require to bring that one cup of coffee? So we're so interconnected, and this abundance is the core of it. And when we come into that tone of appreciation, attention, and gratitude, I mean, it brings all the highest frequencies.
It
And
does.
right, and that's the separation, even I think from sort of getting lost in the victimhood, which is quite real, but also getting lost in the victimhood and also in the hero story of rescuing the victim, which creates another victim.
That's another really important piece that more and more people, thankfully, are talking about. It comes out of psychology, which is this victim triangle. There's 3 points on it, and they're all the victim, the villain, and the hero. Like where are we placing ourselves in any story we're saying out loud or internally? Where are we centering ourselves? Where are we centering others? And if I'm centering somebody as a victim, then I'm centering myself probably as a hero. And that is all just leaking so much energy. It's not bad, but we can become lucid to it and then come right back into appreciation. I mean, I've got this PDF I keep adding to every week for this prospering course and ask people to print it out and work with it. And I've been looking at it every night when I sit down to dinner, when I'm home for dinner. And like, I really let myself be confronted by the first two questions. What's prospering in your life? Where can you bring more focus to the tools and practices of prospering? Like those two questions, I'm like, man, I've been reading these books and doing this stuff for so long, but it's still a wonderful confrontation because I can go further. And it's so easy, especially, we live at this recording at a politically and societally rocky transition point, liminal space across the globe, and especially in the US. It would be easy to just watch a lot of so-called news, over empathize, and like just see, oh, there's no hope, forgetting that we are the instruments through which source moves to enact any hope into reality.
That's right. Neville Goddard, who I used to love so much, I think he had a show in Burbank or something, or, in like the 50s, he was the self-realized master of, the 1930s. And he would say, you are the operant power. You are the operant power. None of this happens without you. And I think that really becomes the bridge also with the magical thinking of law of attraction, that one can sit there and just feel, no, you have to take action to, you have to be transmuted. And you want that alchemical process to happen within you. And then we want it to occur in the world, but it cannot occur in the world unless it occurs in us. And this is when this revelation, which really is a revelation that hits us, that we cannot be separated from our good. We only can be hypnotized into the belief that we are. And whether it's for a moment or for a lifetime, hopefully we get struck with lightning or we have an aha to wake us up sooner and often, to where we begin to remember, oh, I am my good. I am my good. I am the good. I cannot be separate from it. And how, just as you're pointing to, where do I want to amplify it? And then, may my life not be wasted. May I really be resourced in such a way so that the energy is being used in such a way so that it's spiraling and functionally serving as much as possible.
And dissolving the illusion of separation, like one of the practices I've invited everyone into, and I'm practicing as well, is like spend 3 to 5 minutes 3 times a day seeing the entire cohort that's currently going through the course and anyone who ever touched the course actively prospering. You don't have to know what their name is or what their face or their circumstances. I notice for me that when I focus that way, like let's just say all of us, let's just take a moment, listeners, focus on all of us, including me and Kristen, please, and all of you. And you don't have to know who all is listening across the globe. And it doesn't matter if it's later or now, it's still now everywhere. Time is a construct. What does it feel like to just actively imagine what would you feel like if you knew you and all of us were actively, radically prospering more and more and more, and that prospering was bringing a blessing stream to the entirety of existence? What does that feel like? Just to imagine that for a few moments. If that feels good, what would happen if you started turning that into a practice that was regular?
Wow. And powerful. It reminds me of an experience that I did have in India where we were asked to, we had one person on the call who really needed $10,000. And the monk had asked us to pray for everyone on the call to receive $10,000 or more. And so we did this. And in 2 weeks, I got a check in the mail for $15,000.
Come on. I
Yeah.
love this. I got goosebumps.
Great, totally great. And it was like something for back vacation, which was never even part of my job. Like, So it was truly miraculous. And I would say probably 70% of the people on the call got checks for more than $10,000.
That is incredible. That evokes for me. So Lynn McTaggart, who wrote The Field back in the day, is going to be on the podcast, God willing. We've got her scheduled, and one of her later books was called The Power of Eight, in bringing groups of 8 people together. And she's a newspaper reporter or journalist by trade and a skeptic by training, and not like a big woo-woo believer. In fact, the results that were happening for people when she was releasing some of these books and materials, she told us in a lecture in Basel, Switzerland, she had a hard time swallowing it. And so the power of 8 had to do with groups of 8. And I don't think it just has to be 8. That's just what worked around their system. But 8 people, and they would pick somebody to affirm that whatever need was there, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, was already done. And what they noticed is that everybody in the group was receiving tremendous transformation by focusing on the other person. And they would all take turns every week. Like that right there. I mean, I feel like I'm going into an ecstatic state just thinking about that is the energy of abundance right there. And the more I taste the energy of abundance, the more abundance can be attracted to that actual vibrational fit.
That's so beautiful. And it's so true because the universe not only is abundant, it's incredibly efficient. So it's constantly looking for the greatest efficiency in order to produce the most positive for the most beautiful change. And that's why, even, which may be an old biblical quote, many are called but few are chosen, or something like this. Like, so, the universe calls, you're called, but you choose to answer, and the minute you stop answering, the universe moves on, right?
Yeah.
So, and Neville Goddard would say too, the law is no respecter of persons. So there's nothing special about us per se in terms of our story and our particular skills, even though we're incredibly special and incredibly unique and incredibly known, impossible to not be known through and through and through. However, the law and the universe is no respecter of persons. And if you're toning the frequency and answering the call, you're on. And the minute you stop answering the call, you're off. But you can answer again. But to have that respect for that efficiency, and that it has this implication that it isn't just you. And in fact, when it's not just you, that it's so much more powerful. The brain gets lit up with all the beautiful chemicals. Life has meaning. And I used to say, you were meant to give your gifts, because if you don't give them to others, you can't possibly know your gifts. You only begin to know your gifts when they're reflected back to you from all different angles, from different people who receive them.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to get over ourselves. One of the main classes of contraction that we all go through is inhibition until we don't. I can think of a few people in my community over the years who call me their teacher and study deeply, and one in particular who has tremendous training in yoga, in a system that required you to be certified in another yoga system before you could get certified in this one. And I remember asking her early days, and if you're listening, I love you and you're doing great now. You're finally speaking publicly. But I asked her, would you lead the group, small retreat, it was like 25 people. Would you lead us into some postures that are beneficial to sitting on the break? Oh, I could never do that. I'm so in here. Oh, I would be scared to speak in front of people. I'm like, but we all love you. You have this is, so the gifts are not mine, because
Wow.
whose were they before they came to me? And if I don't pass them along, the law of use is not being honored. And so there's a decline in abundance. And so sometimes I feel like we just have to feel the fear and step forward and make the offering, offer the smile, offer the
Yes.
smile.
Right. That's so beautiful. Wow. I think that, especially in this age of social media, that's so needed, that message. I mean, some people just get out there and do it, but still, then when you see all the different people, people think that they have to maybe do 10,000 things before they get out in public. I think, there's probably another famous quote, but I remember Marianne Williamson saying it once at a conference where, the way will show itself once you start on the path. Sometimes knowing that something needs to be done is enough, and then as you begin to do it, the path begins to appear.
And I respect that what we're discussing, Christian and I, we both have a lot of practice with different teachers and systems getting out of our own way and are still learning to get out of our own way. But like, there is an infrastructure, there is a process. It's, I respect if you have some big gift and you haven't yet given it. Where do we begin? Well, where Kristen invited us. It starts with a breath. It starts with a breath. And then, what do I have? What can I do?
And really to find that opportunity to lift others up,
Without trying to be the hero.
Without trying to be a hero, like really having it has to have some genuine, integral honesty to it. And, I still think you can have the intention for it to have a positive impact. And also it's probably the fastest way to get you out of a low energy, even stressed out, unresourced, scarce mindset, is just to really, or to give what you think you don't have, that can be in any which way. If you feel like you're not getting enough attention from friends, to reach out to a friend. You feel alone, go and help a neighbor. All these kinds of things that seem incredibly foreign in our world. I was talking to a friend who was having a difficult divorce of this and that, and they were really fighting over financial resources. And I had asked her, do you also find it in the home in terms of not being able to, praise each other or to really support all the good things that are going on? And I think that when we really examine ourselves and look at this, if we're reluctant to say something supportive or kind to a friend or to a colleague, it's so important to become aware of this, because it is the virus that then goes through the whole life. And that also will stop that financial abundance, because it's one is related to the other. And because the miserliness of the kindness in the heart is also related to the miserliness of physical resources. They are very much one and the same in the spectrum. And I
Like an
think,
aperture. The same aperture is used for giving and receiving. So if I'm narrowing it for giving, I'm also narrowing what can come in.
wow, yes, totally, like
Like
atrophying.
have you heard
Yes.
this quote from Meister Eckhart, brilliant Christian mystic from the Middle Ages, who the church tried to shut him down? They didn't actually, but they wanted him to because he was so ecstatic in spreading it. One of his famous quotes is, "The eye with which I'm seeing God is the very same eye with which God is seeing me. One eye, one seeing."
Oh, wow, wow.
And I'm
Yes.
relating that to what you're telling us.
Definitely. Life is dependent on us. So I think that's very much like this, when we look at it and we say, okay, we're dependent on life, but life is also dependent on us. And if we limit our experience and limit what we're giving, then life is limited. And if we step out and expand, life expands. So this is, and maybe even like Lynn McTaggart, where they chose the number 8, just in terms of the symbolism of the infinity sign. That one creates the other, the unmanifest creates the manifest. And this is constantly occurring in our life. That where we withhold, and again, it's not that we should be bleeding energy or exhausted and blah, 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 but where this is sort of in a more integral concept, that I'm aware, life is absolutely, if I'm asking life to give me greater experiences, life is asking me to participate more at the same time.
I'm just basking in the pause with you. Like, seems like a really great moment to ask you the question I like to ask every guest. And it's based on a quote from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who opened the Zen Center of San Francisco in the 1960s. And he said, "Death is certain. The time is not. What is the most important thing?"
It really is to live. It really is. It really is to find the awe and the magic in the moment, and and to have that commitment every day, to not let it go by you, and to see the beauty. If there is something that is abundant in this world, it's beauty. And you find, just to see it in every moment and to really look for it and not miss it. When I was a little girl, my dad used to say to me, you have an opportunity every time you meet someone to learn something. And if you meet someone and you walk away and you haven't learned something, you lost an opportunity. Everyone has something to teach and share. And this is true. Everyone has a good within them and a good to contribute. And I think in life, it's to really see the beauty that's in everything that is manifesting in the moment around you. And when it's been experienced, you've had a reason to live in that moment, and life has had meaning.
Mm. As the birth mother of this material, the book, The End of Scarcity, is there anything that you sense or could sense into that you've wanted to be asked for the benefit of people?
It's been such a big part of my life. This book really sort of started opening maybe in 2007 for me, and probably actually much, much sooner. I had a profound spiritual experience, I think when I was 24 around this book. So in the 90s. And I had another profound experience. When I was walking in the Sahara Desert, where I was shown two rocks in a dream, and the next day the rocks materialized, and I was told that the spiritual and the material were one. And when I found these two rocks, they looked like bricks when they were given to me and when they were buried. But when I took in the dream, when they were given to me, and then in the sand in real life, but I took them out and they made they were two perfect halves of a whole, of an oval. I have them over there. But and it came to me when they came together that the material and the spiritual are one, and that the new money systems, and this might have been in 97, that the new money systems that were coming, which are a reiteration, the return of the original money systems as money was intended to serve humanity. It's money is sort of like a beautiful green goddess who was turned into Medusa, who longs to be set free and to serve the dance and the celebration of humanity, of all the gifts and joys that we create for and with one another. Until the consciousness comes to such a point that money will have served its bridge capacity and no longer will be needed. But we are coming to the consciousness for this solution to really come into place, and it will. That the polarity needs to come, probably, and I haven't quite decided if it's the polarity or the duality, but I think it's the polarity. The polarity needs to come to sort of some type of respectful duality. So much like this life appears linear, but it's really spiral like, or whatever the word would be. And if we took the two opposites and we made them a circle, they're the most resonant point on the circle. And so where we have sharper divisions, and some believing in the divisions can provide some mental comfort for a period of time, because people aren't being challenged at the moment and they're getting a reinforcement of an old belief system. But as this polarity becomes more muted and turns more into just another aspect of duality, another aspect of real diversity, it will come into the celebration of all how divine humanity is in all of our creations. And then money can come into the place of serving true plentifulness, prosperousness, abundance. But as we continue to hang on to that trilogy, that victim, villain, hero, um, the unconscious dance with scarcity, and don't give ourselves the spaciousness for that greater sense of consciousness that we know and is calling us all the time, these systems can't be birthed as fully. But as we heal these, that polarity within us, but accept the duality within us, that paradox, we step closer to birthing this world of plenty each moment.
Hmm. I don't know about you listeners. I have a lot that's just here to be with. And in my own case, it's not so much sifting through thought forms and words, it's the palpable presence that I feel and I hope for you listeners has been foregrounded. Part of the gift that's intended for this podcast is to model collaboration, verbal and nonverbal collaboration, to model the possibility of two or more listening for and discovering together what's possible for all of us. And you're a part of this as a listener. You're listening, whatever time sequence you're in listening to this, it's still now, and you've been actively contributing to this flowering that we're all able to sense into. So I'm inviting you to listen more than once. And Kristen, it just tickles me to spend time with you. Whether I speak or don't is irrelevant. It's just, there's just this absolute generosity of heart that it's clear you've cultivated. I'm sure we haven't gotten into your childhood wounding or anything that still lingers, but like, you just keep getting up and showing up to love more.
So beautiful. I think it really is true that life gives us what we focus on. And I wouldn't take adversity away. I wouldn't take challenges or loss or grief or any of these things away, or heartbreak. They create such an important texture in life. We just want to be more resourced to have the full experience. And then to know, just as you're saying, we have the rudder. We have the ability as humanity to steer the ship as to what is possible. And especially if it sounds impossible, then it absolutely is possible, because it's just we're seeing, from the illusion. And not only can we do this, we're born to do this, and we need to do it together. So I hope that everybody who's listening is inspired, and may it grow exponentially, because that vibration moves to every single their whole universe, all the people they know, and collectively we create this incredible pattern of concentric circles like the flower of life that is the new geometry of humanity. So if we went from a pyramidical or hierarchical systems of lower consciousness that were necessary, that were effective, now as everything is flattening or turning into, I don't know, hypercube dimensions, but it really are these incredible concentric circles that are interlinked, where the center is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And the power that each person holds and is willing to hold is probably indescribable. So it doesn't take much, and it brings everything once we tune into it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything that you've gone through in life, where you've chosen to grow, that we'll never know about, sacrifices that you made that got you to this moment to be able to share with us in these ways. And I look forward to what's yet to come. I look forward to knowing you for a very long time. Just thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Scott. This is such a beautiful space that you create. Like, who couldn't just sink into this forever?
I love
Ah,
that. I
thank you. This
love
is
that.
like,
Future husband, are you out there hearing this somewhere?
oh,
Well, we're going to do what we do, which is we're going to end being together in silence. There's such a gift in silence. And it started out, in all transparency to you listeners, as my editor asking for a cushion of space in the video for editing. And so what I got moved to do is bring us back to the beginning intro that you've listened to, where I've invited us to soften the soles of the feet, the palms of the hands, corners of the eyes, region of the ears, tongue, pelvic floor, and let the breath just flow, come in deeply and go out slowly. And we're just going to end together being in this recognition, to whatever degree you're able, of the generative force of life itself that is loving, is benevolent, and is inexhaustible. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.